So when it comes to our D&D games, we typically give out items and gold at a respectable rate. Actually, if you take a look at the rules there, realistically, a 5e character hardly gets any, but no one ever follows that rule. My question for you all is, how often do all of you go Monty Hall in your games? And for those of you that don't know what a Monty Hall is, a Monty Hall is where, let's say, a normal adventure going to fight the dragon, you'd get like 2 whole magical items. Instead, you'll get 20. Everyone's going to get decked out in a whole bunch of things. You're going to get all the gold, you're going to get all the items, and you'll be just swimming in all that fun stuff. So, Aviad, how often do you go Monty Hall in your games?
So I will admit that I had to Google the term. I wasn't familiar with it. And honestly, at the very beginning, at the very early levels, I rarely give magic items. I want them to feel the thirst. They need to want the magic items to show up. And then when they reach like 5th, 6th, 7th level, I start giving them out more. But then, on higher levels, when you actually get to a dragon's hoard, there may be quite a few magic items there. I'm not sure I'd give away 20. That's a bit much, but 6 or 7 even, very possible. I mean, if a Holy Avenger exists anywhere, it should be lying around in a trove, in a hoard of an ancient dragon, right? So yeah, higher levels, I'm more okay with that. So they have a lot of items to choose from.
Okay. You got to work for it. Building blocks. You got to get there. Josiah, what
Yeah.
about you? Monty Hall, yes or
Yeah.
no?
I think it depends a lot on the game, which is a huge cop-out answer, but we'll get there. It does depend a lot, though, on the game that you want to play, right? If it's for a one-shot, I usually don't care. Like, I'll just like halfway through be like, yeah, you find this, you find this, you find this. We used to run a series of one-shots on the channel, actually, where the entire premise was a genie was forcing the party to do something, and then they could wish for whatever they wanted at the end of it. Like, no caveats, just like whatever. So that was always fun.
I wish to not do the next adventure.
Yeah, well, like, there was one guy, Draconics. He was like, I want to have my own game show. We were like, sure. So, anyways, yeah. For one shots and stuff, I feel I usually am like, yeah, come to the game level 7. You get like 3 rare or worse magic items, whatever you want, because then I can kind of balance it for that. For longer games, I definitely agree with Avia that you want it to feel special, right? So like I'll usually throw out a little sprinkling of like, oh yeah, there's a little thing here, +1 sword here, this kind of thing here. But like the juice you get at like big moments, right? Like, oh, you finally did like the first boss fight of what's going to ultimately be like a 10-level campaign. Like, great, they're probably going to drop a couple things that are pretty awesome. I do think that this question's interesting, and something that we really need to consider when answering it is like what a magic item even is and like what the purpose of that is, right? Because you generally have 3 categories of magic items, right? You have +1 swords, like weapons that are, or even some other items that let you cast spells, but tools that are meant to make combat easier, to let you kind of punch a little bit above your weight class, right? And then you have utility stuff, like an immovable rod, for example, is a great example of a utility item. It can be used as a combat item if you're bold enough, but stuff that basically will make the party's life easier, and different tools. And then your third category is just like the big shrug, like, I don't know, just figure out a way to use this, like your really weird stuff. I think that it's important to consider like which category an item falls into, and sometimes it can be multiple, and what that means for your game, right? Like if I'm going to be putting the party up against threats that are pretty deadly compared to their level, I'm more likely to give them like a couple extra weapons, like a Holy Avenger or a +2 or +3 weapon of some kind, or like a necklace of fireballs or whatever, because I know that they're going to need that to adequately face whatever it is they're going against, right? And same thing goes for the utility items. Like, you want your players to always feel like they're getting access to new cool stuff, but you never want them to have like option overload where it's like, wow, we have 700 things, like which one of them is the correct solution to this? But like, you ever want to see a party get real creative, just give them an immovable rod. The immovable rod, I've seen that item used in so many ways. So stuff like that is like, or like a portable hole. I've seen the portable hole used and abused in like a million different ridiculous ways. Yeah, the portable hole is wonderful, right? So I do think it's fun giving those items out, but I also think just in general, it's important to consider like why you're giving it to the party and for what reason.
Alrighty. Yeah, definitely don't let those portable holes fall into players' hands because, as always, players will undoubtedly ruin everything. More importantly, they'll ruin themselves. And that's the most important part. They will ruin themselves. Not if, not when, or I guess when, but they will. Fred, how about you? How often do you go Monty Hall in your games?
Very rarely nowadays do I go Monty Hall as a result of some fairly bad results and experiences. And I have gone Monty Hall, and it's amazing how quickly Monty Hall goes to Monty Python. So they are related, apparently. It's sort of like intrinsically tied. Maybe that's because that's where they got it from. You know, the concept of Monty Hall came from Monty Python. Games can go down that track and just get out of hand. I've kind of found that when I did run a campaign where they found lots of magic items because they wanted lots of magic items. We were playing Dungeons and Dragons 5e. They were used to playing Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, where you just trip magic items. So it's like, which items should I take? I've got all these items in my back, but I can only wear so many rings, and I can only wear so many suits of armor, and blah, 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 blah. So they wanted all that sort of stuff. And they wanted to craft things, and they wanted to find plans so they can make more stuff. And in the end, they wound up trying to manufacture bags of holding and have a factory and a warehouse to store them. And then one of them said, can we take 14 of these bags with us? And I said, yeah, sure, you can do that. Not a problem. No, so we're all going to take a bag of holding to hold our stuff. Cool. What about the other bags? Because there's like 9 bags left. Oh, and one of the players like, I'll take those 9 bags. I'm going to stick them in my bag of holding. And I was like, really? Really? And then the conversation was like, what happens when you stick a bag of holding into another bag of holding? Isn't there supposed to be something that happens? And I said, sure. But what happens though, Fred, if it's 9 bags of holding, not 1, but 9? It's like, world just ended. You know, it was a singular, world is gone. So I had my campaign go down that route. And then one of them said, do I have time to cast 1 spell before we get sucked into the void? And I said, sure. What's that spell? A cast wish. The only way to get out of that situation was to just turn back time and start again. Like, you're never going to try to manufacture bags of holding ever again. So I've had that. My experience is that Dungeons and Dragons 5e is misconceived around magic items. They assumed that everybody who was playing Dungeons and Dragons was going to like the idea that magic items were rare. I like the idea myself, but players don't. They just don't get it. Like, played video games and 3.5 and 4e, lots of magic items. Suddenly, now we've got to find just a few. I usually don't put that many in my game. And if you find really powerful ones, it's probably cursed and it's going to cause you a lot of strife. Because just one magic weapon is enough to counterbalance things too far and towards the players and the monsters. You know, circumventing damage resistance is basically you now do twice as much damage as you did before because you're hitting a monster that used to have damage resistance, but now it doesn't because you've got a magic weapon. High-level games, if you play them, high-level players don't need magic weapons. They are like a magic weapon of lethal destruction.
Yeah, I will say if you have problem players, they're thirsty for bags of holding, give them a quick bag of devouring, and they're never going to touch one ever again. Happened in one of my games. In regards of my games being Monty Hall, that really comes down to the specific game. I have ran games where you get nothing, suck it up, you are never getting anything ever. And then I've ran games where you trip over a potion and then you stumble across an enemy who's got a sword, you get to steal it. It really comes down to the individual campaign. I'd say more often than not, I don't go Monty Hall, but the times that I do, the people seem to enjoy it. They're like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. We just fought these enemies. And, oh, that enemy had braces of archery and they're beating us up. Oh, and then we go and fight this T-Rex that's got a band of intellect and it's super smart and berating us, you know? Like, I really like those styles of games, but it really comes down to what the players want. I always discuss it ahead of time. Hey, do you want this to be, you know, just absolutely gonzo, or do you want it to be more realistic? As far as realistic as you can make D&D.
Yeah. Fun fact, by the way, something I realized yesterday is that the Belt of Giant Strength, if you have a druid wearing that, it still functions in all their animal forms. So if you have like the Storm Giant Strength one that gives you a 30 strength, and then you shift into like a mouse, you're a mouse, but you have 30 strength. The implications of that are so stupid. This is kind of tangential to the question, but this is the kind of thing that giving out a lot of treasures facilitates, right? Like, your druid might shift into a mouse and then just like go suplex the assassination target or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go break this dude's neck with my mouse paws, like whatever. It's ridiculous.
I think I'm more interested now in seeing a druid with the belt of dwarven kind, so you can be an animal with a beard. You're like a scaly creature, but you've got a full-blown beard. Like,
Yeah.
you know, those are the kinds of things.
Frog with a beard.
The beard, absolutely. Those are the kinds of things that you really only get in Monty Halls. So it really comes down to the kind of game that you're trying to tell. Is it gonzo or is it traditional? I guess we can call it that.
Something I will highly recommend to everyone, whether you do this, just do this sometime, whether you do it as a one shot or you do it as like a short campaign or whatever, who knows how it will turn out. One of the most fun experiences I ever had running a D&D campaign was they were playing a group of like level 7 adventurers. The entire premise of the campaign was that they just found a deck of many things. And
yeah,
we did this under the assumption that everyone was going to draw at least 2 cards. And we were like, you just cleared a dungeon, you're chilling at the tavern, you found this weird deck, you know what it is. And then like the campaign spun out of the results of the deck of many things. And it was wild. It was super wild. That item sucks. But if you base a campaign on it, on the understanding that like this might just be us sitting down for an hour and laughing at how ridiculously we all died, then like you can have fun with it.
Absolutely. I played in a game as well where the DM gave us a deck of many things that regenerated. So obviously it was just an absolute clown fiesta. And the best part was my character would hold on to the deck, but I never drew a card because I wasn't stupid. Everyone else is like, oh, I got 50,000 gold. Oh, I just got my soul taken out of my body. Oh, I'm just sitting there like, I'm not stupid like all y'all. I'm going to reap the benefits. And I'm not going to suffer any of the consequences. Yeah, and once again, that was a Monty Hall campaign. So go ahead and tell us. Yeah?
No, I was just going to say that campaign was the same one I was talking about earlier, actually, where like they found Paylor was silent or whatever because the paladin drew a card that was like, he learned a cosmic secret or whatever. So I just handed him a piece of paper that said Paylor is dead. And he just like looked at it and looked at me and he was like, for real? I was like, yeah, that was what started that campaign.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
Yeah. So go ahead. So go ahead and tell us, how often do your games go Monty Hall? Are you throwing items and magic at them left, right, and center? Or are they scrounging for the littlest thing? Go ahead and tell us down below because I would love to hear it. Alrighty, that is going to do it for us. This was an incredible experience. Let's go ahead and show off what you're cooking up and where we can find you all. Fred, tell us all about it.
You can find me on YouTube. You can find me, well, it's probably where you're probably going to find me the most. How to D&D, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Don't really spend a lot of time on Twitter. I'm only there for Wally. But yeah, that's it. That's me.
Alrighty, Albion.
Pretty much the same. Beyond the Screen on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I guess. That's where you can find me.
Alrighty. And Josiah.
I mean, not to sound unoriginal, but I think we all know what the deal is at this point. You can find me as Dungeon Dad on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that good stuff. Yeah. Come check out Monster of the Week.
Alrighty. Totally awesome people pumping out amazing content. Go check them out. Like, comment, subscribe. Do all those things. But that is going to do it for us on this one. Thank you so much for watching. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.